actually mean that sincerely. I think Paul should be applauded for what he is doing by inviting everyone together to talk about doing something like this. I've seen projects sort of get imposed on a community and they don't fit and it doesn't work, and I think it's really important to get community buy-in and input to really shape what ultimately the organisation is going to be. And there's no one aquarium that's the same as another. There's always some tweak to that aquarium that makes it fit in a community. And so Paul's asked me to talk about how do you get something like this started, and I guess if you'll suffer a little bit of self-indulgence, I'll explain who I am and where I'm from, and that might help make that understanding. So I was actually born in Australia and I grew up on a sheep station, about 3,500 acres, and about 900 acres of that was unimproved bushland, and so I got to work with native Australian animals. I'd work on the sheep station for 5 days, and then on the weekends we'd go and just immerse ourselves in nature. And then I kind of, very corny, country boy, I mean I lived 500 miles from the coast. I went to the coast and I sort of fell in love with the sea and sort of pursued that ultimately as a career. And what became very apparent to me, moving from this really isolated area, was that very few people have the opportunity to have the immersion in nature or get into contact with nature that I did as a child. When I was a child, it just seemed natural, that's what everyone did. But in the urban environment, it became very clear to me that that was a very unusual circumstance. And I guess that was kind of the start of my interest in connecting people with nature and having that formative moment when they turn over a stone and find a salamander or something like that, which so few urban children have that opportunity. So I got an undergraduate degree, and then I got my first job at SeaWorld in Australia, which is a marine park, not affiliated with the marine parks in the USA. It's a entity unto itself. And it was a very marine park style environment. There was no education program, and I just thought this was an incredible opportunity to teach children about the marine environment. So at the time I was sort of the low man on the totem pole. I suggested we could do this, and the administration said, "Oh, that's a fabulous idea, yes, we should do that." Months passed and nothing happened, of course. So I thought, well, I'll just write my own education program. I have no background in education. I'm actually a shark biologist. But I wrote the first educational module, and I went out and actually went to a few schools and got some interest. And I said, why don't you come to SeaWorld, and we'll work some sort of special rate for you to come, and we'll do a class. And it just was hugely successful. The letters just flooded in how wonderful this was. And that was really my first time of going out into the community and talking with people in the community and finding out what they needed, and then kind of making it fit with what SeaWorld was doing. And that's kind of a theme that's, I guess, been repeated throughout my career. So at SeaWorld I sort of rose up through the ranks. There was no research foundation, and I actually got the research foundation started. That came about because there's a shark meshing program off the coast of Australia where humpback whales are caught, and we started a program of releasing the animals from the nets, but also trying to find out how to prevent them going to the nets in the first place. And I was the chair of what was called the Shark Meshing Community Liaison Group. And we actually contacted John Leanne off Newfoundland, who had devised an underwater bell that warded right whales away from the pound nets. And we implemented that in Australia, and it was very, very successful. And then reflective discs we used for dolphins, and then we changed some of the gear to prevent dugongs being caught by the nets. And this got a lot of community support. It was in a fairly heavily populated area. People would, with field glasses, see whales being caught in the nets. And so it was an opportunity to get some funding to initiate the Research Foundation. It was the first independent research foundation in Australia. It was in 1989, I believe, 88. And very, very successful. And again, that could only have come about by working with the fishing contractors who maintain the nets, the fishing community itself, the Department of Primary Industries, who was the main overarching authority, and just speaking with people in the community. So then I went to Spain, Barcelona. I won't bore you with all the details of that, but started up a project there. fabulous project. Obviously, it's a very different scale to this one. The first year in Barcelona, we had 1.98 million visitors. Wonderful. 22% were school students, which is an amazing thing in the first year. So wonderful. And then really that's my interest. I mean, I'm not actually interested so much in the how much money it's going to make. That's fundamental and critical of the executive director of the Ocean Explorium, so I'm always aware of that and take that into consideration. But my motivation is actually seeing children get in touch with marine life and having that formative moment that they can carry on and actually take with them through life, whether it be as part of their career or maybe they go into some other career where that informs their decision making and informs the way that they act as a citizen contributing to the community. And so I then went on to Portugal, where I basically built the team there that started up and ran the project. Peter was the senior architect and designer of the whole complex. And the whole team there, there was no culture of aquariums at all in Portugal. So we were employing the sons and daughters of the fishing community. And this was it's a wonderful story. At the time, they were downsizing the fleet in Europe. They had to reduce the fleet by 20% in 5 years. And so there was some funding available to retrain, in inverted commas, the sons and daughters of the fishing community. We said, great, these are people who love the ocean, who've been working with animals, and we set up a course to train them in aquarium sciences. And in the end, we actually employed 12 of those students at the Oceanarium de Lisboa, which is this institution here. And just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. I think, from my perspective, I'm a very applied scientist. Pure research is necessary, it's fundamental, but I guess from my farming background, I can't help but want to get my hands dirty and wet, and so I really respond well to these sons and daughters of the fishing community who are also very hands-on and very down-to-earth approach to the way they do things. And it was just a wonderful program. And so I went on to New Bedford, and I'd say New Bedford was probably the most challenging. Spain was tough too, but in New Bedford, some of you may know the history. There was a plan to have a very, very large project, and due to change in government and various other things, the federal tax credits that were going to help support it were not available. And the community in New Bedford was really bruised by that experience. They were sort of licking their wounds and very sceptical about an aquarium project starting up in New Bedford. And I knew that before I came to New Bedford, but I came nevertheless. And really, it was all about trying to understand the needs in the community, the assets in the community, of which there are many, and bringing those together. And the Ocean Explorium in New Bedford has a physical space, and we have live exhibits, but it really is the hub of a network that really goes out into the community. We have about 20 community partners that enable us to reach the people that we reach. And our annual budget's about $1.3 million a year, and we worked out that since we opened in early 2009, we've reached 50% of the students in the whole New Bedford schooling system. We've reached 30% of all the students in the South Coast region, which is a large area, and we've reached over half of the teachers. We have a teaching professional development program, and in New Bedford, only about 25% of the teaching staff who teach the sciences have any background in the sciences. So they're teaching a subject that they're very uncomfortable with. And so we have this program where we bring those teachers in. Not only do we give them content that they can deliver to their students, but we give them the confidence to deliver that material in a way that they can really communicate this to the students. And of course, ultimately, they can also bring the students back to the Ocean Explorium. And we worked out that we'd actually reached over half of the teachers in the whole New Bedford community as well. And for a really very modest institution, that's starting to already have an impact in the community. And we work with a youth empowerment group, we work with a whole variety of schools, we work with the Arts Council. There's all these different groups that come together and just augment our capacity to deliver things. You know, many of you would know, I'm sure, that arts and sciences are sort of intricately linked, so it's a very nice mix as well. So, one very key element of any of this, of course, is the socio-economic context, and then the economics of the aquarium itself. And Peter's going to speak to that at length, I'm sure. But that too is a very important part of the mix. How do you actually make it work? And again, you have to respond to the community. What assets, and I don't mean physical assets, but cultural assets do you have in the community that will enable you to leverage that and really deliver a good experience to the public and to the students and the teachers that come to the facility. And it's amazing what you can do on a very small budget. It's, you have to become very entrepreneurial, and in New Bedford we've been very, very, I would say, nimble at responding to these opportunities as they come along. When we opened the facility in probably the worst economic time in our living history, and we survived that and have been able to deliver all this stuff to these people who have been very happy and worthy recipients. So I could talk all day, I won't. Very nice of you to be my captives, and I'll be your hostage later.